Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska show. I'm your host, John Quick, coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. I'm actually in Anchorage this week with the family. And boy, do we have a treat for you today. We hope to break the internet. I have special guests today. But before we go into that, I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, and reading Must Read Alaska. And if you have a smartphone, Android, or an Apple phone, you can get our Must Read Alaska app at the App Store. You just type in, go to your App Store, whether you have an iPhone or an Android. Type in Must Read Alaska and our app pops right up. It's free. We put a lot of time, money, and resources into that app. So get it. And if you do like it, leave us a review. If you like this show, also leave us a review on Spotify or iTunes or Amazon or iHeartRadio. You can leave a review pretty much anywhere you listen to us, which is very exciting. But today I want to introduce our special guest today, and that is Senator Jesse Kiehl from Juneau. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska show, Senator.
Good morning, John. Thanks for having me on. Good morning, everybody.
Well, super excited you're with us. So for folks that maybe, I think we kind of all live in our own little bubbles. I live out in the woods in Nikiski on a dirt road. So for folks that maybe don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about who you are, what your district is, and maybe, what brought you to Alaska in the first place? Maybe you grew up here. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Sure, yeah. I'm not going to get into too much of the details of the story of how I got to Alaska because my mother considers birth stories pretty private. But yeah, I was born and raised in Anchorage, and grew up on a dirt road up on the sort of middle section of the Anchorage hillside. Not quite so high up that you worry about an earthquake shaking you down to the inlet, but good neighborhood to grow up in, as long as you didn't need to get anywhere because you had to have a car to get to anything at all. But I lived in Anchorage until I finished college, went to school outside. And then during college, I had an opportunity. I'd picked fish in Bristol Bay on gill netters. I'd worked tourism in Anchorage, wearing a stupid red vest and putting tourists on the motor coach. I had to call it a motor coach to the airport,
nice.
or the glacier or what have you. Yeah, it's all right. I don't think my old boss works there anymore. She's not going to dock my pay for it. And then while I was in college, I had an opportunity to intern for Ted Stevens back in Washington, D.C., one of our two U.S. senators. And he had two internship programs. One was for immediate, you just graduated high school. It was short 4 weeks. You'd see the Capitol, you'd do a little office work. But the college interns, he had far fewer of us. We were there all summer long. And to this day, I have no idea how he did it, but he managed to pay just enough that you could share a dorm room nobody else was using for the summer and eat a lot of top ramen. What it meant was you didn't have to have money flowing in from somewhere else to be able to make it and do that internship. And man, that was the summer that Bob Dole resigned to run for president, and welfare reform was happening. And it was 2 years after the 94 amendments to the Gun Control Act. And there was a lot of discussion about that. We were gearing up for a Magnuson-Stevens Fisheries Act reauthorization. The BRAC, remember at the end of the Cold War, the Base Realignment and Closure Commission was trying to close Fort Greely right then. And one of our college interns was from Delta Junction. You can imagine how those conversations went with a senator. But he put an hour and a half in the schedule every week. The guy was about to be the chairman of Senate Appropriations, right? One of the most
Big
powerful
job.
people in D.C. He put an hour and a half in his schedule every single week to sit down with the interns. And literally, the one time we ran out of questions, he was ticked. And so it was amazing, and it set the hook on public policy, right? How do you figure out people of good intentions and very different philosophies and backgrounds? How do you get a stinking thing done? What do you do? There's never enough money to meet all the needs, much less the wants, right? Yeah. How do you budget? Where do you get it from? How do you actually get the work done that the American people expect you to do? I was hooked. So went back to college, realized that Washington, D.C. and I did not get along. We were not a cultural fit at all. Too much emphasis on status and dress and stuff that just didn't care about. So I worked on getting an internship in Alaska. At the time, the University of Alaska's legislative internship program was very inflexible. Nowadays, it's named after Ted Stevens, and it is much more flexible. But back then, you had to be a UA student or nothing. So I had to work with some good people to create an internship in the governor's office that next summer. They built it out of a determination to get it done and some somewhat creative readings of the state's contractor rules or personnel rules or something. Some very skillful people managed to pay me, again, just enough to rent a single bedroom in somebody's house, eat top ramen, and take my bicycle down to the hatchery and catch enough almost fresh chum salmon to have a little protein in my diet. But I made it work, right? I was able to make it happen, and worked in Governor Knowles' office that summer as an intern. Finished college, came back. I spent a year working for Tony Knowles in the office under Bruce Scandling. Went out to the Department of Education and Early Development, staffed the state board and the governor's children's cabinet. Tony Knowles had a children's cabinet to cross the silo lines in state government and look at kids' issues. And then I found an opportunity to work as a legislative staffer for Juneau's state senator, a man named Kim Elton. We made a lot of boy named Kim jokes. He's used to them. And worked for him for 9 years until he went off to Washington, D.C. To be the Department of Interior's Alaska person.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then we had a little trouble with the appointment of his successor to fill out the rest of his term. There was a little conflict with the governor at the time and local Democrats at the time over who would get appointed, how many names got forwarded. I think everybody played that exactly wrong. So I spent 48 days of one of the only 90-day sessions we had working as a staffer for a district with no legislator.
Wow. I bet that was interesting.
It wasn't fun, but we got a lot of work done. We mitigated a lot of harm that was coming our way. And then I got to work for Dennis Egan for the next 9 years. At some point during all that mess, I just got really tired of all the, late nights and working weekends and not seeing my wife and 2 kids. I should probably put them in this story at some point. I got a wife and 2 kids. I just, something snapped. So I ran for the City and Borough of Juneau Assembly at the same time.
Nice. So tell me a little bit about what did that look like? I mean, kind of everybody has their story of, a lot of folks maybe first ran because they didn't like something that was happening in their borough or their city or their district. Was it something like that for you, or was it literally you were a staffer and you're working 70 hours a week and you needed something different in your life at the time?
Yeah, it's more the latter, John. And I know that doesn't make any sense. Whatever it is, we just know the medication isn't helping. Honestly, my first fundraiser ever, somebody looked at me and he said, "So, local office, huh? Who gored your ox?" I had to tell him, actually, I'm not ticked off about anything huge, but there's a lot of work that needs doing. I got some problems we need to fix. I just obviously had been in politics and public policy. They go pretty closely together. It's hard to dissociate them completely. And a lot of folks had come to me and said, there's an opening, there's an open seat. The incumbent is term limited out. Local government has term limits in Juneau. And we think you do a good job and we want you to get involved. And I'd thought about it. I had in the past, let's not pretend that I was naive here. I had in the past put my name in for possible appointment to fill vacancies, not the Kim Elton vacancy, but others. Including in 2014 when I was one of the 3 finalists to replace Beth Grutula, and Governor Parnell went another way with that. I guess I was on the assembly at that point. I take that back. I ran for assembly in 2011, but I'd thought about it, and so I was interested. At the time, we didn't have a good solution for Juneau's sewage sludge, right? I mean, the basic stuff that city government just has to make work, right? When people flush, it has to go away and work. We pay for that. And if it doesn't work, man, that's not a Republicans and Democrats thing. That's a city government doing its job thing. So we didn't have a good place to put the sludge. We were putting it on a landfill, which is private in Juneau. You had one neighborhood taking 32,000 people's worth of excrement. I mean, that ain't right.
Yeah, that's not a great solution.
That ain't right. So anyway,
So
problems,
is
right?
there something that when you were on the city and borough of Juneau, is there something that sticks out to you of, you know, that you were proud of, you know, this thing for your time there, something that is like your proud moment of your time served as on the assembly there?
I'll give you a couple, and I'll try and be more brief about them. Actually, one of them was coming up with a sewage sludge solution within the bounds of reality. We first looked at this, and we brought in consultants, private sector folks who look at utilities, and they said, you are so undercharging for your water and sewer, city. You should raise your rates 10% a year for the next 10 years. And we went, whoa. And the voters went, whoa. And so we scrubbed those numbers, and we worked on what we could do, and found other avenues and solutions, and twisted and worked and stretched and figured, worked with a great citizen advisory board, and local industry folks, including Alaskan Brewing, right? They use a lot of water, and God bless them. We're glad they do. I'm a big fan of their products, as my waistline will attest. That's why the camera stops here, John. But so we really moderated that. We did have to raise rates, but not like that, not 10% a year compounding for 10 years. And we came up with a sewage solution so that we were not putting sludge on a barge or putting sludge in one neighborhood, right? And then the other thing I did was an equal rights law. So Juneau didn't have its own local equal rights law. Anchorage does. Other communities had. We relied on the State Human Rights Commission, and there was nothing in the state human rights law that, at the time, that protected people from discrimination in working, in housing, in credit, on the basis of your sexual orientation or your gender identity. Best conversation I had in that whole thing was with the Chamber of Commerce Government Affairs Committee. I'd worked out a solution, worked out a way to do it, that it wasn't any more paperwork for a business, right? That was important to them. It mattered to me that they said that. And so I came back to them with that. I said, here's how I propose to do it. And I had one guy said, I just don't understand why you do that. And I said, listen, I got people coming in and telling me they work hard every day. They pay their bills. They keep to themselves. And they're being told they can't have a place to live, even though they pay their bills and they never damage the unit. I mean, nobody here would do to kick somebody out on the street. You're all business people, right? I had somebody else who worked hard every day, only commendations in their file. They got fired, right? They did the job. They got paid what everybody else got paid. They weren't, angling for more money and those things. And I'd go back and work with these people. I said, now, nobody in this room, would you run your business like that? Somebody who's good to the customers and had no problems? You commended them for all that? No. You'd hire the best people and make money. Do your work, right? And they all kind of nodded. They said, well, yeah, of course. I said, yeah, none of you would do that. It ain't right. And we ended up passing that thing on an 8-1 vote in the Juneau Assembly. So I was really proud of that work, because it's just about nothing more than making sure people who do their work, who pay their bills, can get the things that you and I can get when we pay our own bills and do our own work too. So that's all that ordinance was, and I'm sad we needed it. It's pretty rare that we needed it, but I'm glad we did it.
So you live in a unique situation where you live in a capital city that's only reachable by airplane or ferry. We have lots of folks that listen to our show all over the US and also in the UK and Australia and Austria. And so if you're listening, the senator lives in an area where, most people's capital cities you can drive to. Well, Juneau, you can't. So Senator, can you explain to me if the ferry system is important? I think I know the answer to this, but is the ferry system important to the folks that you represent in your district? And, why is it so important? I think a lot of folks, including myself, I don't have to rely on a ferry system. I get in my car, drive to Three Bears, I pick up my stuff, do whatever. Why is it so important to you and the folks you represent?
Yeah, it's infrastructure, John. I mean, that's it. It's infrastructure. It's surface transportation, right? And we need a lot of modes of that. The rail belt of Alaska has a railroad. You have highways that connect down to the lower 48 grid. Just about all your freight comes on a barge, right? Just like ours. It almost all comes by water. Your fresh produce, by and large, it all comes by air, just like ours. right? So, but you need all those pieces. And when you go to Three Bears, I guess I don't know your route. I haven't checked your house, John. I'm not trying to be creepy, but I got a nickel in my pocket, and Thomas Jefferson on that nickel is saying to me that John drives on a state-owned and maintained and plowed highway, right?
Yep.
And we don't charge a toll, right? So to get from one community to another in Southeast Alaska, where we're on islands mostly, or there's big old glaciers and fjords that separate us, the surface transportation for a truck or for a family or for a small school bus full of, the basketball team, that's got to get on a ferry and go somewhere. That's it. Now, we do pay a fare. We do pay a toll. We cover, depending on the year, anywhere from 30 to 45% of what it costs. Your tolls would be pretty significant up in the rail belt if you had to do that every time you drove. And you don't drive to, most folks don't drive to work or the grocery store without touching a state maintained road. We pay gas tax too, right? So when you put all those things together, it's a piece of the infrastructure. And what you really find, John, when you dig deep into the numbers, right? And this is what Alaskans hire us to do, legislators, right? Dig deep, take your values. The values are what you interview us on when we campaign, and then go do the homework for me, right? That's a representative republic form of government. So when you dig really deep and you look, and 70 miles of road is going to cost $750 million, $1 billion to build, you go, whoa, whoa. If you do that, we're not paving an inch in South Central Alaska. Every nickel of the federal money is going to one project for years. That ain't going to work. So maybe run a boat. How about we run a boat?
Yeah, and it would be 50 years to permit the thing, probably, if not more.
So, well, I mean, you and I are thinking of one road, right, that would connect Juneau north. But now do Sitka, now do Petersburg, now do Ketchikan.
So, Senator, if you could flick a switch and could drum up a ferry solution that would be, in your mind, the best solution, what would that look like? If you could kind of have, anything you wanted, what would that solution look like?
Well, the first thing we'll do, and I have worked, by the way, with Rob Myers, who is one of the most conservative members of the Senate and a long haul trucker by trade and by training, right? That's what the man does to feed his family. I've worked with Rob Myers on a bill that would change how we manage the ferry system, because it's in the executive branch of state government. And our Alaska Constitution says that's the governor's thing. And every time we elect a new governor, the ferry system leadership tacks to the new politics. And we're making multi-$100-million infrastructure decisions. These boats are not cheap, right? They just make more economic sense than billion-dollar roads usually. And not in every case, right? I don't mean to be doctrinaire. You need a long-term vision and a long-term plan to make those decisions. We had a problem a few years back. We spent $120 million on boats that didn't connect to the docks we had. And we didn't change the docks. I mean, that's dumb, right? Yeah. I support the ferry system. I do not support dumb. So I think we would take a whole lot of politics out of the management of that ferry system, and we'd have maritime professionals freed up to run it and make really long-term decisions. Then we'd get a lot more efficient in how we run the boats. And I got to tell you, I have captains and crew members and engineers and every group on those boats come into my office saying, they won't let us do it better. And they won't let us do it smarter. And we have problems, right? One of the issues with bureaucracy is that DOT runs the ferry system and Department of Administration negotiates the contracts. And right now, the last round of contracts, and this is not unique to the Dunleavy administration, it is a carryover in the Dunleavy administration. They should have done better and they haven't fixed it, just like nobody before them has fixed it. Nobody at DOT is at the bargaining table with the ferry unions with DOA. That's dumb. I support the ferries, but let's not do dumb. So we've got things we can do to really make them more efficient, right? Because we need them. I support them. That doesn't mean blank check.
I like that. I tend to think, I like the model of what the Alaska Mental Health Trust has done, and they've become self-sufficient. And if there's any way that the ferry system would be able to do that, I think that would be an exciting day for Alaska. So my next question to you, this Senator, is this: what's your vision for Alaska? I know that, we often on this show, we talk to a lot of conservative Republicans. And I think, part of the reason why I asked you on the show is I think it's good to just hear other people's perspectives. just listening to you and having you on the show doesn't mean that Must Read Alaska agrees with what you're saying, but it means that we value that you have your own opinion. So what is your vision for Alaska? I think that people will find that you care about Alaska just like somebody else might care about Alaska.
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, born and raised here, 2 kids. I want them to come home and work and have opportunities here. So my vision for Alaska is that we build a bright economic future on a stable base, right? And I think that it's not going to be government's job to decide what that future looks like. Government's job is just to help stabilize the base and make sure we have the things that people need to go out and live good lives, and build their businesses and raise their families and do the things that we all want to do as Americans, right? And so that means sound infrastructure, means good public safety, means strong public schools, right? The things that we all rely on so we can go do our thing and make happiness and make prosperity and make all the things that families do and Americans do. So what does that take next? Well, I mean, it takes getting the state of Alaska off the oil price roller coaster. Because I've been in this state. There's a picture, my parents tell me, in Alaska Magazine from 1977 of the Oil's In party at Valdez, right? And somewhere there is this scrawny dude with a goatee and this really short, pretty lady, and they have a little tow-headed girl, about 2 years old, by the hand, and this fat baby in a diaper. And that's me at the Oil's In party in Valdez. Oil paid all the bills from just before that until just a few years ago. But every oil province ever explored has had the same basic production curve, right? Rapid ramp up, peak production, steep decline, long tail. Now we're moderating that long tail, but we're in it, right? We're not coming back here, with all respect to former Governor Parnell, anytime anybody sees in the near future, or in the possible future. Oil's gonna be a part of Alaska's economic future, right? Nobody serious is talking about shutting that down. You always find somebody crazy, right? You can find somebody with an extreme message on the left or the right. Nobody serious is talking about shutting that down, but it's not paying all our bills anymore, unless we tax it to the point where the companies close up shop and go home and then stop paying all our bills anymore. So we're gonna need to diversify state government's revenue. A piece of that, John, not all of that, a piece of that means tying the revenue state has to a healthy, growing economy. Because right now, and this is upside down and backwards, I want to be real clear about that up front, economic growth that's not an oil well is bad for the state budget. That's crazy. That runs the incentives exactly backwards. But economic growth and population growth comes with costs to state government, kids to educate, somebody gets divorced, goes to court, all the things you need a government to do, and no money. No revenue. So it would actually be, weirdly, in the state's financial interest to shrink the economy as long as we kept, that's dumb. That's dumb. We don't want that. We want to get the incentives straight so that state government is invested in a healthy, growing economy. Now, that doesn't mean massive taxation, get all the money out of everybody you possibly can. But some connection fixes those perverse upside down incentives so that state government's job, no matter which way you look at it, is to work for people and their economic interests so that you have prosperity for people to go raise their families, start their businesses. Getting off the roller coaster, letting businesses and entrepreneurs and families plan and know there's going to be a decent school for the kids and all of that, that's going to be a huge help to just unleashing Alaska's future potential.
So talk to me a little bit about SB 79, I believe I'm getting that right. I think from my take is you saw maybe a loophole that disabled veterans were kind of getting the short end of the stick on it, something in particular. So talk to us about how you fix that and what this bill entails.
Yeah. So Senate Bill 79, a constituent brought this to me. We looked, we can't quite find how we got here, but here's where we are. When an Alaskan turns 60 years old, you qualify for a lifetime hunting, fishing, trapping license. It's a permanent card, right? You don't have to buy your license every year. My folks have one, or at least my dad has one. Lots of Alaskans have this. And for disabled veterans, we provide a permanent card too, but it's hunting and fishing only. It doesn't allow for trapping. And I'm not sure how we got there. Now, of course, we have images in our mind of folks with disabilities who couldn't possibly run a trap line, but that's not all our disabled veterans. And we shouldn't fall into any traps thinking the wrong way about that. There are folks with service-related disabilities who certainly can and do today run trap lines, part of Alaska's proud trapping tradition. So Senate Bill 79 would make them match. It would match them up so that you get that permanent card, hunt, fish, trap, whether you're a senior citizen or whether you're a disabled veteran. I'm surprised that bill wasn't a total slam dunk. And I think a part of it simply was that we have a lot of legislators on the right who are opposed to free stuff. They think government provides plenty of benefits to people already, and they don't want more free stuff. I get the notion philosophically, user pay, user benefit. Certainly I pay for my hunting and fishing licenses every single year. I'm not a trapper myself. God knows I put in enough money in the tag draws with my donation every year. I think I've drawn twice in my life. Anyway,
so did it pass, or is it still?
It has not passed yet. It has not passed yet. I'll be reintroducing the bill because I think that the way we respect our veterans is important. And there are lots of interests out there, right? And anytime I like it, it's a vital thing to recognize. And anytime I don't like it, it's a special interest. But I think there's broad agreement that our veterans have earned that recognition and that the two types of permanent license should match. So I'm going to work on that. I'm going to push that again. I think we can get that passed.
So we live in a polarized world, unfortunately. And, for some of us that live in Alaska, I think it's the beauty of living in a small town in Alaska is we can kind of get away from the mainstream media, whether it's Fox News or CNN or whatever it is, and we can kind of sneak into our little towns in Alaska and forget about it all. But you are in the thick of it no matter what, because you're a senator and you are probably experiencing the polarization of this every day, every week throughout the year. So my question to you is this, Senator, and I've heard yes or no's on this, and I've heard both sides of the stories of, yes, I think this is good, yet no, I think this is not good. But do you think it's important for Democrats and Republicans to work together in the Senate and in the House? Is the first kind of a two-parter. And then do you think having differences is a good thing? Do you think that helps make us better in the long run?
Both, 100% both. I mean, 100% both, right? So part of the art of doing this job is bringing in your values, bringing in your strong beliefs, and working with other people on theirs too. So I work really well with Rob Myers on that ferry bill. And we worked really well together on a bill I think the governor's going to sign here pretty quick that's going to just about end child marriage in Alaska, right? A good bill, right? Rob and I. There's stuff where Rob and I see eye to eye, man. We're looking at, I'm not even looking, the backs of our heads are together. We're pointing other directions, right? And we sit next to each other on the floor and we can laugh and we can joke and we can also squabble pretty assertively, right? And steel sharpens steel here, right? So, where we can find a way to do better, we need to do that. And where our two philosophies, excuse me, just are at loggerheads, we need to argue that out and work with our colleagues to find a way to get to the votes, to get to some solution if there's a problem out there. And you can apply that through just about every colleague I've got, right? And well, hell, excuse me, Peter Machicki, I think if he's not your senator, he's right next door, Kenai Peninsula.
Yeah, he's my senator.
He had a giant bill, took him 8-9 years to pass, rewriting our alcohol laws, did all kinds of good stuff. And he and I worked together on probably 8-9 changes to that bill, good changes, because they came from me. Just making sure you're still paying attention. But there were other things in that bill I don't like. There were other things in that bill I could not agree on. There were other things in that bill that I just thought kept, and in one case worsened, an overregulation situation where we have rules that don't advance life, health, and safety, the things that regulation exists for. I think I was the only no vote in the Senate. 120 some page bill, right? All kinds of good stuff, collaboration. The bill passed. I couldn't vote for it because on that point of principle, I couldn't get there. There's other stuff Peters had. He had a cabin bill that I didn't love, but he did a good job, and it's not harmful. I let it slide, right? It went together with something else, and it passed, and I voted yes on the whole package. We got to do both.
So how does
principles so strong you can't compromise?
So how does somebody, let's say somebody's listening, they're I kind of always give the example, they're a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad, or maybe they both have two jobs and they just don't have a ton of time to get involved politically. How does that person make a assertive effort to make the most amount of impact? Do phone calls work? Do emails work? Does does getting passionate work? How does somebody? I think a lot of folks, if people have been paying attention to politics this last 4 years, the easiest thing to do is just for me to scream at you. I mean, that's what people think is the easiest thing. But what's the most effective way for somebody to get involved?
I will tell you, screaming tends not to work as well. Might make me feel better when I scream, doesn't make anybody else want to do what I want. One of the things about Alaska, right, our state's a small town, John. Our state's a small town. And so, we just did the census and the redistricting, and I think a perfect Senate district by population is 36,700 and something, right? My colleagues in the California State Senate, I'm pretty sure they got 1 million constituents apiece. I take phone calls. They don't. How could they? Right? I talk to people in the grocery store. They don't. I mean, there are the hours in the day. In Alaska, if your legislator won't talk to you, you have an issue, right? And I take phone calls from people who agree with me and who don't. And that's the job. That's what it should be, right? And we should have real discussions about these things. Now is the moment, right? When 59 out of 60 legislators across the state are running for office, our ears are particularly keenly tuned to learn from our constituents about issues, about specific things, and about general values, what you care about, what matters, what's making a difference in your life. It's a representative republic form of government, but it's a participatory representative republic. So the most important thing, right, is the structure, and then comes the representation, right? That's the values of the person you send to do work for you. This is an interview process. You're hiring this person. So call them. If they don't call you back, how bad did they want the job? And then the other part is the participation, right? So when issues come through and it matters to you, you have an opinion on it, weigh in. We should be paying attention. And I can tell you, right? Sometimes I think, nah, I don't like this idea. This doesn't make sense to me. And my phone starts ringing and my email starts pinging from my constituents. And I go, that one needs a second look. People care about that, right? That's the job. Does it mean I'm going to compromise on the deepest issues of principle in my life? The things that, are matters of absolute, faith or deepest belief? No, and the voters might have to replace me if I just don't match up with enough of them on those issues. That's okay. Most voters will understand the difference between, the Amendment 7 to the budget in year, 2021, he voted wrong, but by and large, he's got the good values. The deepest issues of principle, we need to match our districts.
So, Senator, how does let's say somebody lives in your area, which I believe it covers everything from Skagway to Juneau to Wrangell, I believe. and they have a question.
Not quite that far.
Not quite that far. And they got an issue with a road or, ferry question or something that has to do with your district. How do they get a hold of your office? What's a good number? What's a good, what's the website? Tell us how they get a hold, how does somebody get a hold of you?
I probably should have started in the intro by telling you the district. I have, this is going to be probably reversed for the camera, but I have the entirety of the city and borough of Juneau. And if you put your elbow on the bottom of the new Petersburg-Juneau boundary line and your fingertips on Glacier Bay, and you do this, you get Gustavus, there's 6 people at Excursion Inlet. You get Haines and Cluckwan, Skagway, and then after that, you're in Canada. I don't worry about those people. But if you're part of those 36,000 people, my office is 907-465-4947. If you want to talk about campaigns, you got to call a campaign. That's 907-209-7910. The office can give you that number. Just don't expect to have a campaign conversation with my state employee staff. They will direct you to a campaign. And then the email, we all follow the same formula. So SEN for senator, SEN dot JESSE is Jesse dot KIEHL at AKLEG for Alaska Legislature .gov. So SEN dot JESSE dot KIEHL at AKLEG.gov.
Nice. Well, Senator, I appreciate you coming on the Must Read Alaska show. You're welcome back anytime. And for folks just tuning in, we have Senator Jesse Kiehl, who is in Juneau and represents various other small communities around the Juneau area. And I want to encourage you all to listen to the last 30 minutes. If you're just tuning in, it's well worth it. And thank you, everybody, for just watching, reading, listening, Must Read Alaska in general. If you like the Must Read Alaska show, make sure to give us a review. And always remember, we have the Must Read Alaska app on the Android store or the iTunes store. Just put in Must Read Alaska and the app's free. Later this afternoon, I'll have another guest, surprise guest, around 3:30. So you won't want to miss out on that. And Senator, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm John Quick from somewhere in Alaska. Thanks so much.
Thanks, John.